Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've been waiting for. A podcast for podcasters. This is Creating the Greatest Show, and I'm your host, Casey Cheshire. Join me as we interview podcast hosts and investigate the ingredients of a successful interview podcast. We'll talk mistakes, earned skills, powerful questions, and more. This show is sponsored by Ringmaster, completely done for you B2B podcast production. Oh, hell yeah. We're getting going. We're getting started. I hope you're hydrating. Stay hydrated, y'all. I've got my Dr. Pepper. I've got a day-old Celsius. Don't judge. I've got a coffee cup. I'm not sure what's in there. And I am prepared. I have all the things going on because this thing is about to get crazy. All right. Who's my guest today? Well, he is a serious entertainer. Serious, but he's also not serious. And so we're going to get into that and some really cool topics today. He's a speaker. He's a host. He's entertained and educated thousands and thousands of audiences as a professional speaker, an on-air radio personality, 2 podcasts, 2 game shows. He's even done an opening act for famous people like Billy Idol. What is going on? Podcaster, speaker, amazing guy, VP of Community Engagement at Sandler, Mike Montague. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, great to be here. I love the theme of this. I love podcasting. I'm excited to have some fun today.
Hell yeah. And so with that, I'll sip on that day-old Celsius asking this question. What, sir, Mike, pull back the curtain for us on your show and share your most important strategy for a great interview podcast.
So for me, it's about creating tent poles in our circus here. So I'm continuing your circus analogy.
Hell yeah.
I think that when I know what the beginning, middle, and end of the show are, I know what a couple of magic moments I'm looking for, then the rest of the time I can relax. I can improv. I don't have to prep really hard. I don't have to think really hard. I can just listen, be in the present moment. And I know that if I get lost, I just need to lean on that next tent pole. So I start the Playful Humans podcast with a joke of the week every week. And so I have those pre-planned. I got a long list. It's over, 175 dad jokes now that I can bust out. And I know we're going to start with that. I know we're going to have a laugh, and I can ask people how they play for a living, just like you have your nice opening question there. Then we get into it. I see where that goes.
Hold on a second, sir. Hold on. Did you bring a joke for us today? Because I have a joke for you for your next show when you record it.
Oh, yes, please.
You may have heard this one since you're the godfather of dad jokes.
Well, do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
You want to shoot for it?
Oh, okay. Ready?
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Oh, we both went scissors.
All right. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Oh, all right. I win. I'm going first. This joke is brought to you by self-driving cars. Now that there are self-driving cars, there will eventually be a country song where a guy's truck leaves him with his wife and his dog. Okay. The official joke of the week is, what did the bra say to the hat?
What?
You go on ahead. I'm going to give these 2 a lift.
Hey, here all week, y'all. Here all week. Very cool. Are you ready? You know, it's almost like that. Have you seen that? It's like Will Ferrell and somebody, and they're like trying to make each other laugh. You know, one of those.
Yes, things. I love those. That's kind of what got me into that part of it. Yeah.
Okay. What do you call a chicken with lettuce in its eye?
Chicken with lettuce in its eye. I have no idea.
Chicken Caesar salad.
I like it. That's a new one. I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah. Okay. That's your next one. There you go.
That's a good one. So when we start like that, it sets the attitude. It sets the tone. People know what they're there for, but also my guests know what they're there for. It's not too serious. We can get right into the show, and within a minute or 2, we're already relaxed. We're connecting, and we're talking about how we can be more playful humans, which is what the show is about. How people play for a living is usually one of the first questions that I ask. And there's a couple of other tentpole questions that I have along the way in the middle. So I can ask, what do they do when they feel like they burnt out, or how do they rediscover their fun? What do they do for fun that they don't get paid for? any type of questions around their play, their experience, how they make money playing for a living, or how they overcome those challenges and stuff, I think are really easy questions for me. And then at the end, I have a closing game that I play with each of our podcast guests too. So we usually talk about it ahead of time, but I'll give them a choice. They want to play Family Feud, awkward questions, two truths and a lie. They can make up a game if they want, if they have a good icebreaker game. And we know what we're going to end on before we even start the episode. So I know when there's about 5 minutes left, we can play a game, have a good time, and then wrap up with making it about them and their calls to action and stuff. And I think as long as I have that basic structure, I can interview anybody. I know where we're going. I know the questions I'm going to ask. And then we're just going to see how much fun we can have inside of that tent with these tent poles set up.
I love that. And I guess the question is, how many polls is necessary? Is it as many as your tent needs? Or I heard beginning, I heard end, I heard maybe one in the middle as a
Yeah.
sort of transition question.
I think those are good structural parts. It depends on what your show is and what the format is. Is it an hour long? Is it a random interview? Are you trying to collect data for stuff? I host another podcast called How to Succeed, where I ask people 3 questions in the middle. It's the attitude to succeed at whatever they're trying to do, their behaviors, their goals, plans, and actions, and then their technique. So that one has kind of 3 big tent poles in the middle, as well as the opening and closing. And so when I have those, I know that no matter what the topic is, there's going to be some sort of belief, myth or misconception about it. I know they're going to have some sort of regular behavioral plan, something that they have to do with consistency to be successful. And I know they have some sort of hack, tip, or technique that they can share with me. And that way, my prep for every show is done. I know what the questions are. I can show up, I can be myself. And then I'm just learning about the guests. And so I think it depends on the type of show you're doing. But what I love about that is after a year or two of doing the podcast, I can now write a book. I've asked 50 people how they play for a living, or I've asked now 175, almost 200 people what they do when they get burnt out, or why, what their current definition of success is. And all of a sudden, that's a really powerful data sample. I've asked, on the How to Succeed podcast, it's over 600 episodes. So guest episodes, maybe at least 400, where I've asked them what their definition of success is. And I could compile those into a cool YouTube short or a longer video, or like I said, even turn that into a book of how people define success and how they've gotten there, which is, to me, really cool. Another, bonus benefit of these tent poles.
You've got something holding up the tent, but then you're the opposite of the pole is you're free now to have a good time inside that tent. And it's not like you're in a jail where you just have tent pole, tent pole, tent pole, tent pole all around you. And then you're just going from one to the other.
Yeah, you'd be running into stuff, right? You couldn't have a very good time if you have all the questions scripted out before you start. So really what that does is it frees me up to listen and respond. I think way too many people in general, in life in general, are worried about what they're going to say next rather than listening to the answer of the person that's talking, or what they're saying. So I know that if I have just a few tent poles, I can really listen, and I'm just looking for magic inside of that little 3-ring circus. If I get the 3 rings around my 3 tent poles, I can make sure that something magical, something interesting and entertaining happens inside of that circle. And I usually keep going until it does. So if I ask somebody, how do they play for a living? And they talk about, oh, well, it's not really playful. I work hard and I grind. And they go, well, you're a tattoo artist, or you make sound effects for movies. That's has to be some sort of creative, fun job. Tell me more about that. And I can keep diving deeper until I get to where I was hoping to go. And then as soon as I know that I got that one, I can kind of close that off, transition to the next area and say, okay, what happens when you do get burnt out? What are your recovery strategies? What do you do for fun? What gives you energy? And I can keep going down that rabbit hole until I find the gold, and then I can move on to the next one. And when I have these little, things that I'm looking for, I can wait till I find the magic. And once I feel like we've nailed it, then I can move on.
Oh, so many things there, man. I'm awash in the magic of your answers. You make it so easy to be a host because I just have a plethora of things over here. A shout out to my 7th grade English teacher, um,
Yeah.
and the Three Amigos for that vocabulary right there. Lesson brought to you by the movie. But there's so many things. I heard one thing was like closing out a question, and just to make this thing all meta as hell, I feel like we've done a great job hearing about the tent poles. And so it was, I had a little quick check in my mind going, yeah, that feels good. I'm excited about that. That feels well thought out. Now, could make the call as a host to just keep bearing in there. But what I heard
Yeah.
after that in one of your explanations was you talking about when a guest maybe doesn't give you that answer that you'd like them to right away. Like the first answer you got back wasn't it. And I'd love to dive more into this. Now, the idea of, things don't just magically go right, even if you have the tent poles, even if you have these things. Talk to me about digging for it, right? And how
Yeah.
do you avoid that feeling when you get that answer at the beginning?
I think there's only been maybe 3 episodes or interviews that I've not been able to air out of, like
Oh,
I
you
said,
didn't air?
hundreds.
You didn't even air them.
Over 500. No, that I tried really hard and the person would not give me anything, or they were just had such a bad connection or
Oh
topic
yeah,
that they went really sideways from what I thought we were going to talk about, and it wasn't a fit for my show for some reason. I disagreed with everything they said, and it wasn't in a valuable way. I love disagreeing with guests and
sure.
arguing about stuff if we can come together at some point, but it just didn't come together, or they otherwise were self-promotional and they didn't give anything away in the audience. So like I'm thinking one guy just kept asking over and over again, like, what do you do? How does this help people? How can we do it? And he kept saying, well, if you buy my course, I'll tell you. And it was like, you didn't like tell I mean,
No, he
what's in the
said that.
course? I think I
Ugh.
just eventually got frustrated. Like, what's in the course? What will we learn there? Give me something, and got nothing. But um, I say all of that to go back to 99.99% of these interviews. You'll get people that talk a long time sometimes, and then the power of editing helps. So, if I get somebody talking, I usually can interrupt or I can redirect them in the place that I want to go, which is great. If somebody talks short, I'm okay with that too, because then I can ask a lot of follow-up questions, or I can start sharing my insights and stuff to get to where I want to go and find the magic in what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
Ideally,
Talking.
I prep them up front and say, I want,
Yeah.
1-2 minute answers, so I can ask a couple of follow-up questions. Don't feel like it has to be one sentence, and don't feel like you have to fill the whole 30-minute interview. Give me, your best take on it, and then I'll ask some follow-up questions. And when I prep them like that, most people are self-aware enough to toss the baton back over.
Yeah. Yeah. As you brought up the short answers, I was thinking to myself, what do I prefer? Short answers or long answers? It's
Mhm.
probably medium answers because the short ones, to your point, it's like they're not in their zone yet. Maybe we're talking about something that's not in their passion or their expertise. So let's go find it.
Yeah.
The long though, that's what gets to me is when they're just like they're on a spiel and they're just going, and it's not
I had
valuable.
one lady, not to interrupt, I had one lady,
Well,
I
yeah.
asked one question at the beginning of the interview. She talked for 45 minutes. I did not get a
No.
second question in. So what I ended up doing though, as I was able to use it, is I went back in and edited in my tentpole questions and moved around her cyclical stories to have them make sense and to answer our tentpole question. So I was kind of listening along and I was like, well, she actually did mention that attitude, behavior, and technique. She just didn't do it in that order, and she didn't do them all like kind of sequentially. So I went back in and re-recorded questions and built a new interview that didn't
Y-
happen. But I was able to air that one. I was able
Yeah.
to use it. Other
That's
people,
crazy,
I
dude.
can usually jump in and redirect.
Oh, no, what was that?
Well,
You
I
just
was
sort
just
of
saying that like other people, if they're talking long, they'll take nonverbal cues. Like I can go, uh huh. Yep. Oh, they'll take nonverbal, like act like I have something to say, and they'll be aware enough to
Nonverbal
stop
clues,
listening.
like me holding up my cell phone right now, being like,
You're just
checking my
shaking it. Yeah.
scores here. Um, I had someone. By the way, it's really cool that you got her to do that, and she still met your 10 polls. That's really a baller move. A lot of editing work, but you got it to happen, and that just brought the point to me of like when your guest asks you a question that or answers a question you haven't asked yet. Like
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
don't ask it. Just move on. It's been answered. Like asked and answered, Your Honor. Um, but I once had a long person like that, and I had the call of like what to do. I didn't interrupt. I just let them keep talking, and then I like checked my email. Like I almost like I just like gave up
Yeah.
control of my show to them, and they just kept talking. In hindsight, I look back, I'm like, why did I do that? And so in the future, if people ever get that, I'm like, no, 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 no. If I'm doing that, the listeners might be doing that too. We got to take control over this thing and
Right. And I want to
redirect it.
make sure I make them look good and sound good
Yeah.
too, right? If they're going on too long or they've said the same thing 3 times in a row, I'll try to cut that out in editing, or I'll try to cut them off and be like, okay, I got that point. Let's move on. The one thing you reminded me though is it seems to be the bigger the guest, the less self-aware they are. So the ones that I've had trouble with, like that
Dude,
lady was
yeah.
a two-time Olympic gold medalist or something like that, and had a big career outside of that. And some of the other large guests, like they have their story, they have their talk tracks, they're just on a roll, ready to deliver them and stuff. And so I think you got to be careful the bigger the guests you get, and then the ones that have never been on a podcast before either. You have a little bit more prep. I take care with them to make sure that they're comfortable, they're not nervous, and that they're gonna know how long to talk for. But I love interviewing other podcast hosts and people that have been on a lot of podcasts or done a lot of press because they know how to make those sound bites.
Same. It's like a cheat code. If you have someone on your show that has a podcast, first of all, it's a blessing to them because they're probably dying to say something because they've been asking so many damn questions that they probably have an opinion they haven't quite expressed yet. But you brought up an interesting point. I also had an experience with someone who actually is in the podcasting world, whose name rhymes with just kidding, and but very, very, very polished. And it was the first time I worked with someone who was so like TED Talk, very polished. I actually hated the
Robot.
experience
Yeah.
because I didn't actually feel like I was talking to that person. I felt like I was talking to their answering machine. And I tried all of my crazy techniques to break him out of it. I have worse techniques now. I have like much, much more diabolical things that I can do. But I just felt like no matter what I asked, they had something for that. And so at the end,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even know if I know that person. I just spent an hour with them and I'm like nowhere closer. And you got to imagine if I'm feeling that, you know, other people might be feeling that
Well,
too.
their listeners don't even find the show because they've heard all of those talk tracks before too.
Right.
I can think of a couple people that I won't name too, but it's like if you've listened to their podcast, you've heard all of their talk tracks, you know what their take on that is. And so if you go listen to them as a guest, you're like, no, that's exactly what they always say. I learned nothing new
Right.
out of this whole thing, and it's a little frustrating. I like it when people let their guards down and come up with cool things, or we have fun together and they build on what I'm saying and stuff. It makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah, and someone like a Rogan, he's feeding you whiskey and other things to try, and you're hanging out using
Right.
flamethrowers for half an hour. And people don't realize that, like, they're just not naturally comfortable. I mean, yeah, he's probably a cool guy in person, but like, there's some serious rapport building going on beforehand. And so, yeah, the folks that don't do a prep call, and I've heard you say prep like 3 or 4 times, so I want to dive into that next. The people without prep, man, you're going in cold and good luck. And that's why you see a lot of questions about warming people up. But tell me about your prep because I'm a big fan of prep. What do you like to do? How do you get things prepared ahead of time?
I like this one because we're probably going to be a little bit on opposites already. And we did the prep
Yeah,
call. So we know that
I
we have a little bit of contradictory, but I think they go together.
I think so.
I think enough prep to make you comfortable and to let them know that you care and stuff is important. So In today's world,
Cold.
there's no excuse not to Google whoever you're interviewing and look at their website or their LinkedIn or social media and just see what they're up to, what kind of person they are, and what kind of things they like to talk about, for sure. For me, though, I don't necessarily like to read the book, learn everything about them, and do this crazy deep dive. I love the show Hot Ones on YouTube. Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah,
Like, they do crazy research. I wish I had the time to go in and find
man.
things about their childhood and stuff, and things to ask crazy questions, but I really don't. This is a side project, a hobby for me, and even the one that I do for the day job with How to Succeed, I got other roles. I'm trying to keep it moving. But also, I have a couple of things in my favor. One is I grew up in radio and live DJ and entertainment. I'm used to performing in front of 400 drunk people. I'm kind of an improv guy. I like to do it live. I like to see what happens.
Hell yeah.
Mistakes are okay. I'm not trying to create this polished interview that's perfect. I want it to be a little messy. I want it to seem like a natural conversation. And so I found that the amount of rehearsal you have to do to make really good prep sound natural becomes like 100 times the amount of work.
Mm.
So instead, prepare myself, make sure I'm comfortable, make sure they know the type of questions I'm going to ask, but not the actual questions. And the things we're going to talk about, know that it's safe. I'm not going to do any gotcha questions. And you can always say, I don't know, or bail out. But by going in with that sort of curiosity and beginner's mindset, I get to ask questions my listeners would have when they're hearing this for the first time. If they don't know the guest, they're going to have the same questions that I do, learning about this person for this first time, or, oh, they said something weird about their background, or they had a job they mentioned, that they hated. Wonder what that job was, and if I've looked up or
Yeah.
I have their LinkedIn open, I might be able to answer that for myself without asking that question. And so I want to have these natural questions that my listeners would have. But I'll add one more thing that I think is a little bit of a secret weapon for me too, is with this curiosity and with the audience mindset, I still steal the low-lying fruit sometimes from my guests. I don't want to hear the easy answer. Like, if I'm interviewing a sales expert and I say, what's this key to making more sales? And they say, well, obviously you have to make a lot of calls. You have to do outgoing research. You need a number of attempts, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I get that, but everybody's no matter what you're doing. Key to making a better podcast is to make more podcasts. The number one reason
Nah.
people won't hear your show is because you didn't record one, right? So, like, we got
Right.
to go. We got to do that. That's obvious. So if I was interviewing you about, you've interviewed a lot of people about creating the greatest show, I'm imagining you're gonna say things like, you got to do it a lot, you got to get comfortable, you have to do it. So I'm gonna steal those low lying answers before you get to say that. And so, outside of doing a lot of podcasts, putting in the work, getting great guests, what would you say is the key to a greatest show? Now I've stolen those easy answers and we've advanced the conversation based on my research.
I like that. And you're helping seed the answer, or at least it's almost like a weed aside to get rid of the answers you don't want. The basic answers make you force them to go a little bit deeper, and to really think about that. Now to clarify, you don't actually do a call, right? These are series of
No.
emails where you're getting information to people. How many emails? You said there was like a whole series of them.
Yeah, so I use Calendly for scheduling and
Yeah.
automating all of it. There's a lot of prep in the invite. It says, like, here's the 3 tent poles that we're gonna talk about. Be prepared to be on camera and to have a casual conversation. If you talk short, I'll ask you follow-up questions. If you talk long and if you like you've got it, we'll move along, but try to keep them to 1 to 2 minute answers. I put a lot of stuff in there. About the time. So we book an hour, but we don't necessarily start right in the first 3 minutes. We'll do a little prep call right then, and I'll prepare them. We'll pick the games. We'll talk about the jokes. Do you have a joke? Do you want me to go first? Do you want you to go? And then some of the stuff that we're going to cover. And the show, we booked an hour, but the show is only 25 to 30 minutes long. So I say, look, relax. We've got an hour to do the show, to get an hour to get 25 minutes of usable audio. You can start, stop, you can retake an answer if you want, but we're going to pretend like it's live. we're going to do it live, and I can
Mhm.
edit out any ums and ahs and make us both sound
Yeah.
smart. So don't worry about that. But if somehow you really get sideways, it's not live. Just call a timeout, or just it's okay to take a deep breath and think about your answer. I can cut out the awkward silence before we air it. And so I give really that upfront contract and that prep of like, this is where we're going. This is what to expect. This is how long we expect to go. And just be comfortable and be yourself. I'm not going to make you look bad. I'm going to make you look really awesome. Right.
Yeah. What? I think that time counts. That time before, in the green room, if you will, before
Right.
the show begins, before you hit record, before it's going to be actively, like that time counts. So it makes total
Yeah.
sense to me. You don't want them obsessing over these things.
Right. Every once in a while, I'll have somebody ask for like all of the questions that I'm going to ask. And sometimes I
What do you
provide
say?
some, and usually I don't. I usually just send, here's the buckets of questions that I'm going to answer, questions around this topic, this topic, and this topic.
Generally, general buckets of where it's almost like an electron cloud, right? You're like, I can't exactly tell you where it is, but I can tell you roughly speaking, it's going to be in this vicinity. So, couple things on this. 25 to 30 minutes long feels like your sweet spot. And I'd love to start contrasting the the side pod, if you will, the personal pod with the pro
Mhm.
pod, your professional job pod. Do you vary lengths for those? Do you tend to be the same kind of podcaster on both sides? What's different? What changes?
They are a little bit different. So the professional podcast I was really trying to keep it closer to 15 to 20 minutes. I started that one a long time ago, 8 years ago now. And so salespeople for commutes and stuff, like most people's drive is 15 to 20 minutes long. And I wanted them to be able to get through it. It's a business focused podcast. So I don't even know. I love what you said. In 3 hours on a Joe Rogan podcast or Tim Ferriss podcast, they can get really comfortable. They can go deep on some things. I don't know how people have 3 hours a week of extra time to listen to it. So both my shows are very fast from my radio background. I want to jump right into it. I want to get to stuff. I want to get through
Right.
questions. If I get an answer, I want to move along. And it really feels like we pack a lot into that. And I try to shoot for, like I said, 15 to 20 minutes, but as long as it takes to feel like we've covered the podcast. And I've slowed down a little bit lately in the last few years after the pandemic. I feel like I don't feel the
Getting
pressure
old.
to, yeah, maybe, but I don't feel the pressure to um, keep it as like tight
Yeah.
anymore, because people have, they're working from home, they have different commutes, they might be working out while they're listening into it instead of driving and stuff. And I've also not that particular. So if I do have somebody that's really concise and they nail it and stuff, I'll move on. And if we finish in 15 minutes, perfect. If it takes 35 to 40 minutes, I'm not going to delete it or fight it if it was all really good stuff. So I'm really more worried about what the entertaining, you know, every kind of 3 to 5 minutes, do I have something magical happening for them?
Interesting.
And the other one is a lot more casual. The tent poles
Right.
are much further apart, and it all depends on the discussion. So I give myself 25 minutes to kind of find out where this person is, and with their experience, is the work play more fun? Is their personal play more fun? Do they have some sort of expertise I need to dive into? And I kind of let myself explore a little bit. I try to ask everybody both sides of their life, work life and play life, home life, for balance. But I don't want those perfectly balanced. In the other podcasts, I do try to get 5 minutes on attitude, 5 minutes on behavior, and 5 minutes on technique. And some topics naturally stretch different ways, but I try to make it pretty consistent. On the personal one, it's really for me, wherever I think is most entertaining and valuable for the audience, I'll just go that way.
I've definitely seen that same kind of contrast where the marketing pod that I do, it's like a little more formal, like the guest is a VP of marketing and we got to show up and be all buttoned up a little bit, probably not wearing a t-shirt, but still trying to stay comfortable. But this show is much more of a chance to kick back, but also learn about stuff I want to learn. Like you said, for me. So
Right.
on that, even the idea of, for me, I'd love to pose this question to you. And this I would probably make a tent pole if I keep asking this each time. The idea of, who is the show for? Is it for you? Is it for you as the host? And this is kind of a personal question. Is it for you? Is it for your guests, or is it for your audience?
I think it's definitely for the audience, and it should be. There is something in it for all three of us, right? It's sort of an inseparable triangle there. I want to make sure the guests get what they hope to accomplish out of it. And I do ask, after we stop recording, I do post interviews too. I've been on shows where they just go, "All right, thanks," and they hang up, and you're like, "We're not going to talk about how that went or what happens next and stuff." So
They're like, bye, and they click.
yeah.
Yeah.
Side note with your prep call is there should be a little post discussion too about when it'll come out, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is there anything I need to cut or anything that we missed that you want to make sure that we cover before you hit stop, stop on the recording, circle back on that stuff. So I do want to make sure they got their needs met. They got to promote whatever they wanted to promote. And both shows have a clear, this is it at the end, deliver your 30-second commercial. This is about you. And anybody that's listened to 25 minutes of you talk should be able to sit through it, right? Or they'll be interested enough to sit through it. I think on the flip side, though, for me, I get stuff out of it every time, so I'm not worried about that. I love learning. I love hearing all the guests, and even just doing it, having a conversation and connecting with another human being is enough to make that hour worth it for me. So I don't think about myself too much. So during the show and in the prep and the guests that I pick, I'm really trying to pick something that my target audiences are going to benefit from. And there is a little bit weighted in there about who I want to talk to and who I want to meet and feature. So I don't just take anybody. But the majority of the focus is who's going to bring value, who's going to be interesting. And when they're talking, what are they saying that's most helpful for the people listening?
Got it. So really, the quality of show and the end result, I know all three of these people are important, but in your mind, you're putting listeners first. You're putting the audience first.
Audience on top, for
Audience
sure.
on top. Who comes second? This is a terrible question because it forces, but who comes second in that order?
That's a tough one for me. I would say most of the time the guest comes second because they're another kind of, client of mine. I want them to have a good experience. I want them to promote the episode. I want, things out of them. And like I've said, I'm not trying to burn them or anything. I'm trying to make them look good as my second goal. But I will say it's very close, because I told you I have not aired episodes where, the guests might have gotten what they wanted, but I didn't get what I wanted out of the show. And I didn't think the audience would appreciate it.
But you could argue that you were putting the audience first. You didn't want them
right.
to be
It was really
subjected
more
to that
about
content.
them.
Yeah.
But also, there's times where I kind of think that I know better. This is my show. I know the audience. So my needs do come above the guest. They might be wrong, there's an interesting quote, that the customer is always right thing is actually, it's actually the wrong quote. The guy who said that originally said the consumer, the market is always correct. That's like the audience is always right. If they say it was a crappy episode, you got bad reviews and nobody listened to it or whatever, the audience was right. But any individual customer can be really wrong. I think any individual guest could say, well, I think the important part of my story is X. Right. But me listening and knowing my audience, I'll say, no, actually, Y is more interesting to me. It's not that you made $1 million in business. It's that after you made the $1 million, you quit that business and you started surfing. Like, that's the interesting part, not how you made $1 million, because you didn't even like that process, So I can kind of read into it, and I will sometimes put my needs or my questions ahead of theirs, but I try to balance all those things.
Are they both fun, the pro pod and the side pod?
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't have done the professional pod for 8 years if it wasn't.
Sure. Fun. That is a long time. That is beyond pod fading right there. That is.
Yeah. But there is a a creativity itch that it wasn't scratching. Right.
Right.
So there are
Interesting.
some other people and other stakeholders like, well, now I have to worry about what my boss thinks. And we have 400 employees around the world. They're going to hear and share this episode. I got to worry about what they think too. And it's not just the
Yeah.
audience, the guest, and me. There's a whole lot of other people involved there. So I do love doing it. It's super fun. It's also very successful, which it's really nice to see thousands of downloads. It's over 3.5 million now over those years.
Jeez.
And that part is really fun. And then the one that's just for me, I don't really care if that many people listen. I think the people that find it will like it, and I'm trying to let them find the show rather than like promote it and be big. And it's more for me. It's more for my creative outlet and the things that I don't want to do. And I have a lot of fun with that. And I've had other consultants and stuff say maybe you don't start with the dad joke. It doesn't, it doesn't set you up professionally, or people aren't gonna. I'm gonna go. No, that's the thing. If they don't like the dad joke, they don't like me. So it doesn't matter. They can go find another show, or they're not gonna.
Right.
But if they book me as a speaker, I'm gonna say a dad joke on stage. So like, if they don't like that, they're not gonna like my services. So I really want that to be as authentically me as possible and have as much fun for me to do it, because um, I don't have to. And I'm not getting paid to do that. It's not a job. It's just because I love doing it, and that's
It's your
cool.
baby. Yeah, and look, for those not watching on video, if you want to go check the video out, it's on YouTube, y'all, or
Mhm.
LinkedIn. But you got a smiley face T-shirt, and I gotta tell you, I had this thought early on. He wrote it in my notes, probably like 5 minutes in. Oh yeah, oh,
The
it's
logo,
on
yeah, yeah.
brand smiley face from Playful Humans. Even cooler, marketing extra credit. But I will say, I noticed is that a blazer? Is that what that is, or is that a coat or a
Yeah,
jacket?
it has a really fun story if we have time to
Okay,
talk
let me
about
just describe it. So it's got like these like two white racing stripes on it. I noticed that right away. I was like, damn, that's a cool blazer. But I didn't want to interrupt you because you're in the middle of like a great answer. But I'm like, I just want to interject and be like, I love that blazer, man. So yeah, what's the story behind it?
Well, I did want something on my personal brand, something that felt like sporty. I was looking for like an Adidas type blazer, and some of them do exist, but apparently they were like custom made for athletes and you can't buy them anywhere
Got it.
online. And I was watching America's Got Talent a couple of years ago, and Howie Mandel had the opposite jacket of this. It was white with black stripes. And I saw it and I was like, that's what I've been looking for. I've been looking for that exact jacket. So I did some Google searching. I found a picture of him on it. I Google imaged that and, like narrowed it down. And I found the jacket online. It was from Bickenberg's or something, an Italian jacket. And it was like $850. I was like,
What?
oh, crap. I was like,
Oh
well,
no.
I like it, but I don't $850 like it. So I kind of just had it, and every once in a while I thought, and if I got a good speaking gig or something, I'd be like, am I going to do this or whatever? And then last Christmas, it was on sale for $350, $500 off. I
Whoa.
was like, all right, do it. I can do it. I've had had a good year. I'll get it. And so I ordered the jacket online. I'm a size 46, and ordered the jacket. It ships from Saudi Arabia. So
Oh,
it's coming all the way
wow.
from, or no, Dubai. It was coming from Dubai.
There we go. Yeah, yeah.
It gets here and it's 46 centimeters instead of 46 inches.
Oh
And
no.
so I was so depressed, but luckily, I was able to redo the math, send it back over to Dubai and have them ship me a new one.
I
But
did the Google
I
math
love
just
it.
now. That's 18 inches, an 18-inch wide. Is it like a little
Wide
kid
challenge.
suit? Do you have it or you sent it back?
Yeah, yeah, I sent it back, and they sent me
Oh,
the
okay,
right
okay. That'd
size,
be
which is
funny if you had like a mini me and you could put that on them and but yeah, different size. Wow.
luckily enough, they were nice enough to take their return, which was great. And they didn't have the sizes listed on the it didn't have measurements listed on the website. So, um, if you see, men's jackets, you're like, if I wear a 46 or 42, like I'm gonna click on that and buy it. I'm not gonna think anything of it. So
No,
it's
you
awesome. I
just
feel
never
like it's
know.
one of a kind. It's a great personal brand for me,
Yeah.
and it makes it fun when I do speaking events and public stuff that I get to do my personal style and something that
Yeah,
nobody
that's
else
that's cool,
has.
man. And it's a personal brand and to your point, it's authentic. It's what you do. I'd love to go back to this. it's 600 episodes, right? For Sandler for the
Mhm.
um. Do you know the exact number? 600 and
Oh, I don't, because I actually have a company that schedules them and stuff all
oh,
the
right,
time,
right,
so I
right. So
quit
yeah,
counting myself,
so
but it's over
of
600.
600.
We crossed 600 this year, probably 625-ish.
Okay. So can you look back? I feel like you're like grandpa podcast because I've hit 300 maybe, but like 600 feels like a long time more than I can imagine. Can you talk to me about the evolution? Did you hit milestones? Did you hit points where you changed it up? Has it been the same the entire time? Did you get restless at 100? Did you get restless at 300 or 400? And how have you been able to keep doing it?
Great question. There is a lot of evolution. Believe it or not, the show is pretty much the same. Those tent poles are the same now later. Now I do special episodes sometimes, and I'll just do like an audio blog and do my own thing. Or I've had special occasions where I had a guest. We did like a role play roulette where we did sales training role plays in the style of different celebrities, like impressions. Like I would do like we spun a wheel, and so I'd get like Christopher Walken doing a cold call and be like, and I don't know if my name sounds familiar, but and so we'd have to do the cold.
Is this a good time?
Yeah, this is a good
Oh
time
man.
for us to talk. So we did a bunch of like funny things like that along the way, just because I can, and you get bored and you want to do something silly. But the main
Yeah,
show has been that way. I did a couple of series along the way too, where I doubled up for a couple of weeks to try and pour gasoline on the fire, and we had these Sandler rules is what they're called. So they have 52 in those. So I recorded short audio blogs on the 52 rules, and then did one of those a year on
sure.
Friday for a couple of years, just to double up. I'd say the biggest thing is the technology. If you go back and listen to the first show, I'm better on the microphone. I'm more comfortable. I'm a lot more confident about where I'm going now. But the questions are generally the same. The big difference is like audio quality. I've switched to video, so we do it on YouTube now, and we create
Sure.
shorts out of it. I went through I think we started recording in Skype, and then went to
Wow.
Zoom, then went to Squadcast. Now I do StreamYard, so I can have
Sure.
a little bit higher pr- production quality. And
Well, higher than
I've also
Squadcast,
gone through
shots
some
fired.
podcast editors and different tools and people and stuff along the
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Um, I wonder, and my theory then, I guess, is perhaps this tentpole strategy what has been able to allow enough flexibility to keep things fun, and had you
I think so.
scripted out every freaking answer, then maybe you would be bored of the same 10 questions, but you've got a couple of the same and they're in rough vicinity, but you have so much flexibility that every show can really be different.
Yeah, I think every show is different. It's still interesting for me and the audience after 600 episodes. And I don't it makes the prep really easy for me too. If I had to really research each guest, dive deep, write new questions every time, there'd be times where I just don't have it. And so you reminded me of the other thing I do, which is I pre-record a lot. So there's been times where I've been, a week ahead of time, and there's times where I've been 6 months in the can of episodes I've already pre-recorded. And that takes a lot of the pressure off of where if I have 6 months of episodes, I can get burnout and I can take a couple of months off from interviewing if I want and just let it coast for a minute and then come back to it, or get really picky about my guests and say, okay, instead of just taking anybody, now that I've got 3 months in the can, I'm going to wait for somebody that's really good, something that would really get me excited about it, or to talk to, or do some outreach to really big name guests and stuff. And so there's lots of different ways to get rid of the parts that you don't like. So I don't do the editing anymore. I didn't like, especially the video shorts and stuff, is really hard to pick 1 minute clips and make them look good and reformat the different sizes for all the social media
Definitely a
channels and
challenge.
stuff. Like that's a lot of work. So there's AI tools for that now too, writing descriptions of the shows, and the show notes were a big pain in the butt, but now I upload it to Podium, Podium,
Podium.
and Podio, and the descriptions are written, within 15 minutes for me by AI. I edit them and put them out, and easy enough. And video.ai is the one I use for the video shorts for my personal
Okay.
podcast now. And that's been a game changer. Really helped me avoid pod fade and all the stuff that I don't like. And then, try to focus in on the stuff that I really love and makes it exciting for me.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Where can people reach out? Fellow podcasters, they want to send you a shout out, send you some love, talk to a non-salesy person at Sandler to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Or, like, where do they reach out?
You bet. Mike Montague on LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out to me personally. That's the social media channel I use the most, and it's just Mike D. Montague, or Playful Humans on all of the other social media channels. Playfulhumans.com is the website for the passion project. It's super fun, low stress. I help teams play with Legos and do corporate game shows with custom questions, or maybe we put together a Hollywood Squares with your top 9 executives or something. We just have a bunch of fun on the side. There's a playfulness quiz at playfulhumans.com/quiz. You can find out your playful personality. It's like a BuzzFeed style quiz and stuff, which is fun.
Hell yeah, my daughter's all about
Sandler's
those.
an international sales training company, so they're pretty easy to find. Sandler.com. You can find a local office. You can reach out to me or check out the How to Succeed podcast or the Playful Humans podcast.
And all of this stuff is right there in the show notes. You can click through. You don't even have to type. We're saving you all that trouble. Just go clickety click and go say hi. Shoot out a little note to Mike. Don't forget to tell him where you found him on the podcast so he knows you're not a stranger.
That would be awesome. I love talking to podcast hosts, other creators, and I love being guests on podcasts too. So I know I just gave you like 84 calls to action, which isn't the best marketing tip ever, but happy to help any way I can. And I love to just meet other cool people doing cool things.
That's it, man. And I definitely, if the folder on LinkedIn or YouTube, cool people, you're in it. You're added to it, man. Dude, thank you so much for coming on here. It's been so much fun, really, to talk to someone else who values fun and makes it one of his probably personal core values, just to play. And so it's been great to chat with you and just learn from you and double down on some of the things I had suspicions about and now I feel really good about. So thank you.
Should we play a game before you go?
Yeah,
Put you on the spot?
let's play a game.
All right. We asked 100 people to give me a title of a parody film. Can you name a parody movie film?
A parody film. And it's like Family Feud. So it's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Parody.
A movie that's making fun of the other movies.
This is the part where it goes on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. The timeout.
See, I used to judge those people for getting the X's on the screen, but now I just literally.
When you put it on the spot, that's all right. I'll give you an easier.
Help me out.
Airplane, Scary Movie, Spaceballs.
Wait. Airplane counts? What is it a parody of?
Just I think the airplane disaster movies and stuff there. But they also put Naked Gun. I'm not sure that's a parody either. Or A Mighty Wind. I'm not sure. I would have gone with the rockumentary. What's it called? Where they crank it up to 11? I forget the name of it.
I don't know.
Spinal Tap is what I was thinking.
I hadn't seen
great parody movie. Okay, here's one of my favorites. During a power failure, name something you can still turn on.
Wow. Okay. This is a children's show here, people. Children's show. Okay, so not that answer. My cell phone. Yeah.
Cell phone is good. Yes. That's number 6. Spouse is number 5 on the list, in case you're
wondering.
That
was my other answer.
But stove, water, and radio, I think, were the other top answers we missed. Awesome. Well, thanks for playing. I didn't want to,
Oh,
I put my 10 polls into your show, I think. So hopefully we didn't mess it up.
no, this is great, man. No, this is great. This is the first time I've ever been stumped on my own show before. So thank you for that, Mike.
More
Note
comedy
to self,
movies.
never invite Mike back. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
But seriously, dude, thank you. And for those listening, if you learned something, I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes, front and back. So much here. Make your own tent poles. Make tent poles, people. Pitch tents. Go pitch tents, people.
That's something totally different. Don't say
that. Get out of here, y'all. But yeah, dude, thank you again, Mike. This has been fun, man.
Super fun. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. All right, everyone, this has been a crazy mix-up and playfully fun episode of Creating the Greatest Show. We will see you all next time. And next time doesn't have to be next week. Life's too short, and we have way too much to talk about. Find show notes full of takeaways, lessons, and links at creatingthegreatestshow.com. For more information on launching your own podcast or working with us to produce your existing show, come on down to the big tent at ringmaster.com. Until then, friends, whatever you do, do it with all your might. Work at it, if necessary, early and late, in season and out of season, not leaving a stone unturned and never deferring for a single hour that which can be done just as well now. P.T. Barnum.